Welcome, welcome everyone to today's episode of Healthy Living, Happy Midlife. I'm Denise Stegall, the menopause mentor and your host for today. And I am really excited to have a conversation with my friend Judith Ritchie, who is here with us. Let me tell you a little bit about Judith, and then I will ask her tons of questions and introduce her to you because Judith is someone you really need to know and need to follow. So Judith Ritchie, the lovely lady. She is a transformational healer, teacher, and guide for women who are ready to step out of survival mode and into a life of clarity, peace, and purpose. Drawing on her expertise as a master certified HBLU practitioner, we will ask her about that, meditation leader, and energy leader, she weaves together neuroscience, spirituality, and practical tools to help women release long-held patterns, regulate their nervous systems, and reconnect with their deepest desires. Judith, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you today. It's going to be a juicy
Me
conversation.
too. So this is what you do, but you are so much more. And I do have to ask, what exactly is a master certified HBLU practitioner?
Well, we're kind of like the best kept secret in the world. There's only
Ooh.
32 of us in the whole world. And
Ooh.
HBLU is an amazing healing methodology. It's called Healing from the Body Level Up. And it was originated by a PhD biochemical researcher named Dr. Judith Swack, who was doing cancer research. And she found out about the work that Donna Eden and her husband David Feinstein were doing using energy to heal people. And she went and researched with them. And kind of the way I describe it and the way Judith describes it is kind of like God opened up her brain and just dropped all this information in for her. And so she created HBLU. She's collaborated with many other masters. We do NLP in our work. We do spiritual clearing and healing in the work. We incorporate Enneagram work in our process and just basic energy hygiene. All of this is rooted in neuroscience also. So it's a fascinating methodology that I'm a master certified practitioner in, 6 levels plus postgraduate. And then I use that as my primary foundation for the work that I do with my clients. It's nothing short of miraculous. It really isn't.
Well, it's incredible that it includes all of the things that we've heard before, right? NLP and all the different pieces. And what I've always recognized in my work is that it's a good piece, but there's always something missing, right? So it looks to me that the HBLU is basically fits everything into a container, and so nothing's missing anymore.
You know, that's a great way to describe it. And one of the big buzzwords in personal development right now is somatic work. Well, somatic work is simply just feeling into your body where that energy resides. And we do that in HBLU. And then we do breath work. Well, you know what? We do breath work in HBLU too. And then there's tapping. Well, guess what? Tapping is one of our interventions that we use to clear energy. So HBLU is that all-encompassing container. And it's fascinating because people say, well, what about therapy? And what about this? And what about that? And I'm like, you know, those people are actually my clients. They come to me to work with me. And that's been fun to watch too.
That's interesting. So the trained therapist comes to you and works through the HBLU processes so they can go back and help their patients, clients.
And clear up the stuff in their own life.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
That is fascinating. I've known you for quite a while, and this piece is new. I didn't understand this bit about what you do. So let's talk a little bit about what it is you do and how this can help women in midlife. Midlife, pivotal time, lots of ups and downs, right? Why is this a time that women need to come to clarity and to a transformation, if you will, transforming from the person they were before midlife and going through perimenopause to this life after. Because we know the day after your menopausal day, you're postmenopausal,
Right.
right? So this is a long period of time we have in our life, and this is a pivotal moment for this transformation. So unpack that for me.
It's going to be a long answer, okay?
Yes, that was a long question.
Um, I'm going to ask you a question first, and then I'm going to answer. Have you read Women Who Run with the Wolves?
I have not.
Okay, so to you and to every one of your listeners, it's about a 700-page tome. It's called Women Who Run with the Wolves. It takes all of the ancestral stories that come from the different cultures, and it talks about women transformation. And so it could be a Ukrainian story, it could be a Korean story, it could be a fairy tale, but every one of these stories talks about what women go through in their life. And it's really interesting because I meet women and they're 51, 52, 53, and they're going, I'm going through this, and oh my God. And I'm like, no, you're right on time. You're exactly where you're supposed to be in your life cycle as a woman and in your transformation as a woman. And I went through the same thing. I had no clue what was going on. I had no one to guide me through it. I had what I call a dark night of the soul experience between 2008 and 2009, where I looked up and I realized my life wasn't working for me. My marriage was miserable. My relationships with my kids were out of whack. I didn't like myself. I was experiencing physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual breakdowns. And finally, one day I just said, you know what? I'm getting off the train. And so I left my job, a very lucrative job as a financial advisor. My husband and I went through some very interesting issues in our marriage. And I just kind of took what I call an adult lifetime out. And I sat on the couch for about 6 months and I desperately looked for resources. I looked for books and I looked for people to talk to. And I went to therapy and I went to group therapy and nothing was happening for me. Nothing was shifting for me. So I just got still and I got quiet and I did a lot of praying and a lot of crying. And one day I got up off the couch and I literally felt a hand reach over and turn me back on again. I felt the light switch come back on again. And now I know because of HBLU, that's called my God switch got turned on. I had no idea what had happened, but literally I came back in an instant. Went on and got a master's and started discovering this world of alternative ways to deal with things because what I had been doing wasn't working. And what I knew is that women everywhere have a shared experience, right? Whether we
Mhm.
have a happy marriage or an unhappy marriage, whether we have children or not children, whether we have, close family relationships or not, lucrative careers or not, we all have a shared experience. We're women. And I knew that other women needed to know about what I had discovered and then subsequently got trained in. So that's what happened for me in midlife, and which has brought me here doing the work that I do now. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, what an amazing, scary time. I mean, 6 months is a long time to kind of wander in the wilderness, so to
I was
speak.
just thinking that, wander in the wilderness. That's exactly right. Yeah.
That and to be okay with it. I think that's an important piece to really talk through is to be okay with it. It doesn't matter how long it takes, right? You need to figure out what it is, what's going on with you, what works for you. And, whether somebody picks up the phone and schedules time with you or schedules time with their minister or whatever it might be. These are steps that we need to be comfortable to take in order to cross that bridge into this next phase, into this transformation, if you will.
Exactly. And like I said, I did the therapy thing and the group therapy thing, and it was just like being on a hamster's wheel.
Mm.
And there was never any forward motion whatsoever. There was no resolution to what was coming up. Things didn't click. It was just like, we're just going to keep rehashing this. And, I've created something called the Ritchie Method, and we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Mhm.
But the first step in that is awareness. And um, I am not dissing on therapists. Therapy has a place. It is
Mhm.
a great place to go find some awareness, right? Whether that
Absolutely.
comes internally out or whether someone shows you insights of things that they hear you talking about. Therapy is a great place for that. But very rarely does it complete the whole process. You know, the other thing that I want to back up and say that I didn't mention to you is that when I was in my mid 40s, I had an endometrial ablation because I had horrible, horrible, terrible cycles. And my OB, well, my GYN at that point, did
Mhm.
nothing to prepare me for the fact that I was going to immediately the next day after that surgery was complete go into menopause.
Into menopause.
So, again, this whole shared experience that women have, every woman's going to go through menopause. Every woman is going to experience the physiological, the biological, and the psychological,
Mhm.
plus spiritual and mental and emotional
Emotional. Mhm.
changes that come with going through menopause. Men are not taught about it, women are not taught about it. It's up until probably the last 5 years, it's been one of the most hushed up, talk behind your hands, oh my God, the change, kind of conversations that
Mhm.
we have as women. And so here I'd gone through this major life event that, changed so much about me physically, and then followed that up just a few years later with this major life event, of the
Oh,
start night of the soul experience. Yeah, I was in quite a place, around 50, 51, 52. Yeah,
right. And menopause in itself is hard enough when you're kind of expecting it to come at some point. You get the symptoms start to show up, but in your 40s, sometimes the symptoms are minor, you don't notice them, but once you have something major, like the endometrial ablation, yeah, all of a sudden, bingo, next day, hello, you're menopausal. Like
exactly.
you've bypassed like 10 years of experience, slowly experiencing it and knowing it's coming, to bam, hello, it's here. And I can only imagine the frustration and the confusion that you went through, because so I say this, so I'm 54 now. i'm I've had 17 years of menopause experience because I started experiencing menopause at 37. um Basically was told initially, oh, at your age it's just a phase, you'll be fine. But I knew I wasn't fine, but I also didn't know what was going on. So
Right.
for all of these years, like, I've been learning and reading and researching, and I have heard so many women tell me similar stories. I had to have a hysterectomy. Nobody told me what was going to happen. Like, how does a gynecologist not have that conversation with a woman, whether she's a woman or a man? They know this happens. It's not surprise.
But I don't think that our medical world has caught up with the needs of women yet
It's
because
true.
the woman's body has only been studied in Western medicine for the last 60
Yeah,
years. And I
true.
was explaining this to my husband the other day. I said, "Are you aware that every machine, every test, everything is based on the male body, which is a completely different uh, set of hormones and
Right.
muscles and physiology and biology from women's bodies. And so
Mhm.
we don't know how women react differently to these things. So a man, and God bless them, a man OB or GYN is not going to have the same appreciation that a
It's
woman
true.
is going to have. And then, yeah, I know your backstory with what you went through, even classically trained Western medicine physicians are not going to have that same appreciation that those of us who lean into more the natural and holistic and functional medicine world do. Yeah,
Right. They're just not trained. I mean, it's not to blame. They just aren't trained.
that's correct.
And
They're
it
not.
is nice that in the last handful of years, some of the female OBGYNs that were kind of placating their patients for quite some time have now hit menopause, and they're going, oh, shoot, this is different. And so there is more talk about it. But like I said, the change, menopause is all of those things. It's the mental, the physical, the physiological, the emotional, spiritual, all of those things. But when we tend to talk about it, menopause and midlife, we think more of the symptoms and
Right.
the physical, what we are feeling physically, right?
It,
And not so much the other piece that
right.
is there that we haven't, that we're well, hopefully that we're addressing today.
If you think about it at that point, 50, 51, 52, 55, somewhere in there, if you're a woman who has children, what's happening in your life at that point? Your kids have probably left home to go
Mhm.
to they've launched. They're either in university or they're working or they're trying to figure things out. Maybe they're backpacking around Europe, and so you have the loss of your identity there because now if you're not a mother, who are you? Because so many women forget wife and become just mother. And so then you're faced with this husband. And at the same time, you've got things going on that don't make you feel very sexy. So this is a major point where people find themselves divorced because husband wants hot to go, and you're not. And so they think that that's going to help. Husbands think, oh, well, I need, that's a whole thing going on there. So there's a lot of
Absolutely.
pitfalls that come at this time that we don't talk about. We
Right.
just flat do not talk about. He traded in his 50-year-old for 225s, that kind of a thing. And
Mhm.
I think we do a great disservice as a society, and especially as women, not addressing these issues with each other and helping each other understand what's going on. So I applaud you and what you're doing and the conversations that you're having around this. Now, here's the other thing that happens. When we hit this age, there's a wisdom that comes that we don't have at a younger age too, right?
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
before our country became so mobile and so industrialized and now, tied to our cell phones, women used to get together and talk about this stuff. Women would support each other, and there was a way for that knowledge to be passed down. We have lost that with how we have crafted our society. So it's incumbent upon us to continue to have these conversations and encourage each other. And it's like I was talking to a 53-year-old yesterday, and she was telling me about, oh, well, this is happening, and I'm having hot flashes, and these things are happening, and I'm questioning this in my life, and I'm questioning that in my life. And I went, you're right on time. You're
Mhm.
actually right on time. This is exactly where you're supposed to be at this point in your life. So it's fascinating to see.
It is something that you said that made me laugh, made me chuckle. You said, and if he wants all hot and heavy, and I'm like, well, I can do hot. I don't know if I can do heavy. I got the hot thing going on pretty well.
Oh, that's funny.
And every now and then we have to laugh about it, right? It's heavy, it's serious, all of the things, but it is part of life, and we do have to we have to grab hold of it and sometimes laugh, sometimes cry, but then pick ourselves up and say, okay, what are we going to do about this? Right?
Yeah,
Whether it's the hot flashes or the feeling of uh, loss of identity or whatever that piece that you're feeling. One, it's valid. I think it's really important for people to understand, ladies, it's valid. Whatever you're feeling, you're allowed to feel, right? Feel into it, right? And then ask for some support. That's what Judith and I are here for.
right.
And hopefully opening your mind to something that's maybe different, new, um, it can really be incredibly helpful. Our mind is, we think everything's physical, but so much is going on in our head and our mind.
Yes,
Um, with that, I do want to talk a little bit more about the mind and the nervous system, because a lot of what we're doing, most of your work involves nervous system,
it does.
right? And we always think, oh, nervous system, fight or flight, and that's it. But there's so much more. So I'd love for you to share your knowledge on the nervous system, neurotransmitters, all of those cool things that you are addressing when you're working with clients.
I first was introduced to this when I was studying to become a meditation master. and the research that's been done around the profound effects that meditation has on the gray matter of our brains. And if you meditate for as little as 13 minutes a day, you can literally build new gray matter, new folds in your brain. And that gives you more neuroplasticity in your brain, which means that your brain is able to adapt and be nimble and to think and to be healthy longer. And so one of the things that is recommended for people is to adopt a meditation practice because it helps. I'm not going to say it's definitively does this, but what it does is it helps you, if you've got family members who have Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, those kinds of things, it can help in those areas because your brain stays healthier longer. Okay. So that was the first time I got cued into this. And then as I've developed my practice and continued to study and learn, I know that, you know, there's the spiritual side, so the woo-woo side of things, we talk about doing these things and people are like, let's do woo-woo. But what it really is it's all rooted in neuroscience, okay? So let me just give you an example. Mindfulness practices. I use meditation every day, and I'm going to come back to that one. I was in traffic in Houston. I was on a one-way road, and it's 4 lanes across, and I look up, and there's a car barreling at us, coming at us the wrong way. I never freaked out. I never got alarmed. I just looked around me, and I went, oh, there's a driveway right there. So if he continues to come through the intersection, I can just whip into that driveway real quick and avoid him. Fortunately, he turned and got off of the road the wrong way. And that is an example of how I have rewired neural pathways to not go into fight, flight, or freeze, but instead of that reactionary autonomic response,
Mhm.
I was able to stay in that parasympathetic response of being calm and judgmental and responsive to be able to handle a very tough situation that was presented to me within moments' notice. And that's where mindfulness, spirituality, and neuroscience marry. Okay.
Mhm.
The other thing that I want to talk about is the patterns that we have in our brain. And if we have time, I want to get into family dysfunction patterns.
Mhm.
But the patterns that we have in our brain, and if you've ever been on an old country road, and for those of you who live in the city, I just want you to imagine an open field, okay? And you see ruts in the field, right? Where the tractor or the truck has driven forever and ever. Think
Right.
about those ruts being in your brain. Those are literally called the default mode network. Okay, those ruts are
Mhm.
called the default mode network. This is where we go automatically when we are processing something. We reach for that. So if it's a negative family pattern, if it's a history of abuse, if it's trauma, whatever it is, whatever is coded into our default mode network is going to be what we pull out to use to handle the current situation. Is that making
Mhm.
sense to you?
It does. Yeah, that
Okay.
does. Hmm.
So that's why the work that I do is so important because we find those patterns that are in that default, and then we use the energy techniques to do a permanent energetic clearing of them. And in that process, we rewire the neural pathways with the resources and tools that you use afterwards.
Interestingly, I have seen like a graphic, about that. The two, two brains, one with the default mode, and how like just like the pathways, it's the same pathway. But then once your mind is open and you're breaking those patterns, how all of a sudden, like those pathways may not completely be gone in this particular graphic, but there are all these new ones,
That's right.
right? There's new, new options that we had never thought about before because we were stuck in this default mode.
Yes, and that's one of the things that neuro-linguistic programming talks about. NLP calls it pattern interrupts.
Hmm.
And so we identify those pattern interrupts, we enact those pattern interrupts, and then go on to completely clearing, releasing, and healing them, and then have the embodiment side of that too.
Amazing. I'm listening. I'm like, wow. Like I'm always wowed by this. And obviously this is something that I'm sort of in the world, not as in depth as you, but I know what you're talking about. And we've talked about this before, and but I'm still just in awe because it's just not in the general knowledge yet. Right. And I'm so in awe because I'm included in the group who's in the know. And so, our goal is to get more people in the know. And
That's
the
it,
more
right?
people that are in the know, the better their lives will be, their family lives will be. Maybe we'll all be happier and healthier and not so stressed out all the time.
Exactly.
So you did say you wanted to mention the family dysfunction thing. So let's roll into that, if you will.
I have been looking at who my client base has been for the last 10 years and what's the common threads. Because I have a really hard time explaining to people what I do when they talk to me. I was at a birthday party for an 85-year-old the other day, and I was sitting down with one of the guests, and she's like, "So what do you do?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And fortunately, she's a PhD psychologist, so she pretty much got it right, And she's like, "Oh, okay."
That, that's good.
So I've really been trying to nail, how to talk about what I do. And so I have developed a methodology called the Ritchie Method based on the fact that most of us, if not 100% of us, have family dysfunction patterns, right? And when I looked at my clients, I just went, what's the common thread through all of them? Oh, this one's dad used to hit her brother, and she would get in front of the brother so that he would hit her instead. Oh, this one's mother was a perfectionist, and they couldn't play on Saturday mornings because she came and got them out of bed so that they could wash the baseboards in the house. This one's father demanded that she be an outstanding athlete at soccer when that wasn't her love, but that was what he needed her to do. This one's carrying a mother wound. So whatever it is, I started looking at it, and the common thread was there's something in their childhood that has caused trauma that's still showing up in their lives. And it shows up so many different ways. It can show up in checking out, withdrawing, avoiding. You can become a people pleaser. You can
Mhm.
become an overachiever, a person who buys into the hustle culture, because all of those are ways of overcoming the patterns that you have, right? And here's the basic bottom line of all of this. Whatever pattern we have chosen or we have created in our life, it's because that pattern equals safety for us. Because we as humans are wired for survival. So we're going to do whatever it takes to keep us safe. So if we're people pleasers, we are people pleasing because we did that as a child and we were safe. We become avoiders or withdrawn because that kept us safe. We become overachievers because that was the time when we got attention and affection and love from that person. So
I want to
that's
stop you there real quick
safety. Yeah.
because there, because that hit a nerve, that struck a nerve with me. When I was in school, mostly when I was in high school, not so much in junior high school, but my mom used to say to me all the time, "Oh, you're such an overachiever," and she was proud that I was an overachiever, but it was in a way it kind of came off negative. But if I wasn't an overachiever, and I really did, I mean, I was a straight A student, well, except for my one math class, I wasn't so good there. But for the most part, I was a straight A student, and I was top 10 in the class of 400 and something, and I was in the marching band, and I was in this, and I look at that, and even when I was in my 30s, before I met my husband, she would always say things that about me being an overachiever. And because I was an overachiever, I was really particular about the person that I would date or I would marry, almost to the point where I'm never going to find this guy. And so that was something that I really had to come to terms with. And to be quite honest, I don't really know how I did that. Or maybe if I still haven't completely come to terms with it. Right. But I always was the achiever. I had to succeed. And some days in my business, when things aren't going honky dory, I do get a bit of the, oh, wait a minute. If I'm not successful at this, I'm putting this effort in. And mom will still occasionally say, so you make any money at that? I'm like, well, this piece of what I'm doing isn't about that.
Right.
So I absolutely can see, and I mean, I had a very happy childhood, not perfect. My dad could be a pain in the ass. Ooh, can I say that on TV? I guess I can.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. My dad could be difficult. My mom always thought, talked about me as the overachiever. On the flip side, she would always say stuff to my sister like, well, you can't do that. Like you're almost like she wasn't smart enough or she wasn't able to. And that actually, my sister and I are very different because of the way our mom talked to us.
Yeah.
And still out of love, but still negative effect, right?
Yes, yes. And it's fascinating how you can have siblings in a family who are raised with the same parents, and they all have such different takes on how it all works because we create these stories about it, what it means to us. And let me just give you a quick example.
Mhm,
So, when you're 3, you don't have a lot of words, right? But you have feelings in your body,
mhm.
somatics, right?
Mm,
And so when you're 7 or 9 or 12, you have a bigger vocabulary. And
right.
something happens that triggers that same physical sensation you had when you were 3. And now you have words to put to it. And
Mm,
that's when you create when this happens, it means I'm blank.
wow.
And that's where those limiting beliefs and sabotage patterns come in because it's a weird circular thing that we do with our thinking. And I want to talk about the brain for just a second. So we create this identity about ourselves, right? Okay. So then we go through life and it's like, okay, if this thing is true about me, then I must be in these kinds of situations, even though they're not positive, because this thing has to be true about me. And then when the shit hits the fan, oh, see, I knew it. I knew it. It's because I'm this.
Right.
We do this weird circular thinking that way, right?
Mhm, we do.
And that's why we find ourselves attracted to people, situations, relationships, jobs, friendships uh,
Mm,
that are not healthy for us because as much as we don't want to, we're still affirming that negative thing about ourselves because our brain is literally wired toward the negative because
mm.
we must be on alert for the negative to keep ourselves safe.
Safe.
Safe. So that's why when you look back over your life, you remember all the crappy things that happened so much easier than you do the happy things that happen. And
That's
so
true.
when you've got good things happening, you can use your mindfulness practices, the tools that I help teach, to
Mhm,
really soak that in, to allow that energy to come in and really get set in your brain so you remember it. Because our brain has two functions, okay? Our brain has the conscious function and then it has the unconscious function. Our consciousness only activates 3 to 5% of the day. Were you aware of that? Only 3 to 5% of the day.
I
I
was not
know
aware of that.
every one of us has driven somewhere and gone, oh, wow, I don't remember passing blah, blah, blah. I don't remember going through that intersection. Okay. Because we just go to subconscious, unconscious.
Right.
Our unconscious brain is where we operate 97 to 95% of the day. We do things by rote, habitually. We're just going through the motions, right?
Mhm,
So,
mm,
what does our subconscious do for us? It keeps us from feeling hurt and pain. And how does it do that? It blocks and hides all of those things. But we still have the energetic residue of those things that we're dealing with on a physical basis. Okay. So that's why we do the work that we do to clear the energetic residue. Then there's one other component to this.
mhm,
You can call it your soul, you can call it life force, other cultures call it chi or prana, whatever it is. You have an inner knowing and an inner wisdom inside of you that bypasses your brain, that holds all the answers for yourself. And this is what differentiates the work that I do from everybody else. So all of us who are trained in HBLU do this. We train our clients to use a particular technique called muscle testing to access the soul's deepest wisdom. And when you can do that, you unlock so much information to be able to do that healing for yourself that you're not going to get otherwise.
Yeah. I remember the first time I came across muscle testing. I was in California and I was visiting a friend who had a friend who was a chiropractor.
Right.
And we were just chit-chatting and, we were in California. So, always ahead of the curve when it comes to these kinds of things. And she taught me about it. We talked about it. She taught me how to do it. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I kind of forgot about it for a while until one day you and we were on a call, a group call, and you had mentioned it. And I kind of scratched my head thinking, wait a minute, I know what this means, but when I go to the chiropractor, they do this kind of thing, right? But this
Right.
is very different. And so I asked you, to refresh my memory. And since then, I do this every single day when I think, when I'm unsure of what I should be writing or how I should be feeling or thinking or whatever it may be. If there's ever a question, this is always part of my morning ritual, my morning routine. Um, and I'm always blown away with, I knew that, didn't I?
Yep. I'm about to leap out of my chair right now. I'm so happy about this. It just makes me happy. And what you'll find is that your intuition is going to continue to expand and grow, right? And you're going to hear the answer before you do the muscle testing.
That I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
Because I know several people, Judith Ritchie as one, who hears that and gets those downloads. I'm like, wait a minute, I want that too.
You just
I'm not there
keep
yet.
practicing, it'll come.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I know I'm not there yet, but I'm moving towards that. So
Yeah,
exciting.
I love it.
I'm so excited. I lost track of what we were talking about. We were talking about the Ritchie method. Yes.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Ritchie Method. So in analyzing the work that I've done with my clients, I realized there's 4 steps that I take them all through. And I just added the 4th recently because it just became so evident that this was like the missing piece. So we'd already talked about awareness when you go to the therapist or or trying to figure things out. A lot of times we can get there on our own, sometimes not. So awareness is the first step, right? And then we talk about breakthrough. Here's the bad thing about breakthrough. Some people
Mm.
stop there. They think that's enough. They get that aha moment, they get that insight, and they think, oh, that's it. That's all I need. I'm good to go. Okay. So they stop
What
at
do you
break.
do with it?
They don't do anything with it. They think that's the
Oh,
completion of the process.
I
Okay.
see.
And then what really we must do is interrupt survival mode and create new pathways of safety in our body and brain. And we do that through the transformation process. And so what the transformation process does is it releases that energetic residue that we've been carrying around that comes from the trauma, that comes from the limiting beliefs, that comes from the phobias or whatever it is we're dealing with. Okay. And then we literally rewire the brain so that, as I mentioned earlier, we stop being in reactionary mode and we go into response mode. We take that beat, we take that pause, and we analyze what's happening in the moment and choose differently because we're rewiring those new neural pathways, right? Okay, so that happens. So then we go from survival and
Mm-hmm.
self-protection. And now we're empowering ourselves and we're living authentically. But how do we stay there? How do we
Mm.
stay in that healed experience? That's through embodiment of the different tools and resources. So we integrate those into our lives. I use all kinds of different energy techniques in and out every single day to make sure that I've got healthy boundaries, to make sure that my relationships are healthy, to make sure that what I'm doing is flowing from alignment with my soul, and I'm not pushing or striving. And so that gives us wholeness, presence, and peace in our life. And
Yeah.
that's where I bring it all together for my clients.
And it's interesting because before we started recording, we were talking about this, like everything you do, like is in this container, but you're so excited about it. And the energy, whenever you talk about the things that you're doing and how you're doing it, the energy just like explodes. It's amazing. And too often when I'm even just talking to colleagues, oh, the whole thing that they're doing, it's so hard and laborious, and I've been through that and realized that I don't like I don't like me like that. I don't like that Denise. I like the Denise that's excited about talking about menopause. But again, it took me time to get to this place, and it really was the awareness piece was important. And I've heard you speak, and so, other colleagues that we know, who speak in these terms. And in the last few years, it's just every time somebody says something, it's like another aha for me. And it's a beautiful feeling. Sometimes it's scary, like, oh, wait a minute, but it's exciting. And I think it's important for our listeners to know that everything that we're doing in life can be exciting.
It can be. I
Right.
love
Okay.
it.
Doing the laundry, maybe not so much.
You know, if you need some clean drawers, it's exciting to get those.
There you go.
I'm going to share with you. I'm 66. My husband's 78 and a half. We've been married 23 years. And when I married my husband, um, he's never been diagnosed, but I'm going to take a wild leap and say he's on the spectrum, right? I think he's a high functioning Asperger's kind of guy. OCD, ADHD, got lots of things going on. And yet, because of the work that I've done, this world that I've immersed myself in, we have created the most beautiful marriage, the most beautiful relationship that wasn't this way 15 years ago. We were on the brink of a
Interesting.
divorce. And it was because of the work that I've done and the tangential effect it's had on him, and he does a little bit of work with me,
Hmm.
that I've seen these huge shifts for us to have this beautiful life. I see it in my 39-year-old daughter who's starting to speak the same language I speak, who's
I
doing
love it.
some of the same things I'm doing. And we don't do it together. She doesn't talk to me about it, but she's getting it. And I
Hmm.
see these shifts, going out and it goes up into my ancestors. It's going to go down. It's just amazing when we start shifting the energy and healing the patterns, what happens around us.
Absolutely. And it's so exciting to know that that's an option.
It is an option.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
I love it. I love it. So we do need to close up pretty soon. So I want to ask if there's anything that you want to share that we haven't touched on.
I mentioned that when I was going through my dark night of the soul experience, I desperately looked for information. And,
Hmm.
I went to see a local preacher man that I knew, and he took his Bible out and he dumped it at me and told me what a whore I was because I was dating, and when I was going through my divorce. And so when I was at that point in my time and this dark night of the soul experience, I wasn't real trustful of that kind of information. And like I said, it was just me and God that worked through it all. So because of that, I have created a, s- a container, a safe space, a resource for women to come in their own time at 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, whenever it works for you, in less than 30 minutes away a week, get what they're looking for, get what they're desperately needing. And that's my membership that I have. It's called the Transforming Force. You're a member of it. And every week I drop information. I do a training video. I do some support material. I have some type of a ritual or a mindfulness practice or meditation or something for you because those are important, right? That, I'm giving you tools. And then I write you a little love note. And then once a month we do a monthly gathering. And this is what I needed when I was going through this point of my life. And so that is on my website, which is simply judithritchie.com. You can find information about the Transforming Force there. I do group experience work, and I've got a new group program that I'm going to be releasing here pretty quick. I'm not ready to talk about it yet. And then I also have one-on-one work that I do. And then if you're trendy, I just started a Substack channel this week, and so you can find me at the Ritchie Method on Substack, and I will be putting content there, weekly content, long form, and then I'll also be putting in little notes there. Also on YouTube, I know it's a lot, but just look for me, Judith Ritchie, A Force for Transformation. However you like to consume your information, I'm going to be there for you, is basically what it boils down to. And so I invite you to reach out and connect with me on one of those platforms so that we can have this conversation about how to heal the energetic residual effects. Think about Pigpen from Peanuts walking around with all of the dirt around him. All right, put that in a spiritual context and think about all the energetic spiritual residue we're carrying around from these dysfunctional family patterns that are affecting us and affecting us spiritually and in our neuro biology of our brain. And let's get that cleared up.
I love it. And now I'm going to be thinking of Pigpen all day
Every
long
time
for
you
the rest
talk
of
to
the day.
me, you're going to see.
Yeah, I'm going to see Pigpen.
That's cool.
Judith, thank you so much. Truly, everyone, I will make sure that all of this in the show notes are all of this information so you can get in touch with Judith. And the membership is amazing. It's truly, it's something that I am looking at and I'm embodying and potentially emulating too. I hope you don't mind.
I do not mind at all. At all.
Judith,
Thank
thank you
you
so much.
so much for
This
the
is great.
opportunity to come talk with your folks. And, the main thing is you don't have to do it alone. You got me and you got Denise, and, there's other people out here to support you. Take advantage of the resources that we are offering to you because we're all in this together.
Absolutely, we are. Thank you, Judith. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We will see you next time. I'm here live Wednesdays, 12 p.m. Pacific time. Till then, I leave you with this: healthy living, happy midlife, everyone. Have a great week. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Healthy Living, Happy Midlife. My hope is that today's conversation left you inspired, encouraged, and ready to take the next step toward creating a vibrant, fulfilling life that you deserve. Remember, you don't have to settle for fatigue, brain fog, or frustration. Midlife is not the end of your story. It's the doorway to your next best chapter. And I'm here to help you walk through it with energy, with confidence, and with joy. So if you're ready to take this journey further, I invite you to schedule a free strategy call with me. The link is in the show notes. And together we'll design a plan that works for you at this time in your life, for your body. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review your show, the show on your favorite podcast platform. Catch the video version on YouTube so you never miss another episode. Share it with a friend who needs to hear that midlife can truly be the most powerful season of her life. Until next time, I'm Denise Stegall, reminding you that healthy living, happy midlife is not just possible, it's yours for the taking.